So now we are going to see some basics of image processing. So let's get started. So first things first, just open your web browser, go for Google Colab, open it, go to the GitHub repository and type Deepan Raj M. Go to the repository machine learning, inside which you can see a particular folder named OpenCV slash opencv.ipython notebook. Open that. And also for this image processing, we are going to use OpenCV. This is one of the simplest and one of the best library which you can get for image processing. So before that, I'm just going to clone this particular repository so that I can get the pictures that can be used for image processing. And also one thing that has to be noted down is here, like we have used OpenCV 3.4 version for this particular content. So the latest version of OpenCV is 4.1, I believe. So we are going to uninstall this OpenCV's latest version and we're going to install this particular 3.4 version, because in latest version some of the functions have been removed and have been renamed, so that it will be like little confusing for us to utilize it. So it's better to go for the older version 3.4.2.16. So first things first, just uninstall it using the command pip uninstall opencv-python. So to install this particular package, we'll be using this command opencv-python. It's not just opencv. So this OpenCV has a lot of confusions behind it, because we call it as OpenCV, but while installing we call it as OpenCV-Python, and while loading we call it as CV2. So these are things which you need to keep in mind. So now you can see we have installed OpenCV 3.4.2.16, and also you can see there is a dependency package for it, which is something called NumPy. And I told you, obviously NumPy is one of the biggest package and one of the widely used sub package for a lot of libraries. So now we are going to see about the basic hello world of images. So for that I'm going to load OpenCV, import CV2, and also you can see I have imported a package from the patches of Colab known as CV2 underscore IMShow, because CV2 has a functionality to pop out images as an output, but since we're using Google Colab, which is browser enabled, we cannot just pop out images from the browser. So Google has given us a patch for that to showcase the image on the browser itself. So why we are just importing exclusively, this particular package google.colab.patches import cv2 underscore IMShow. So in this particular example, we are going to load an image, we are going to display an image, and we are going to save this image, because these are the three primary steps. No matter what application we do, these are the important steps, because anyways, in order to do some image processing or some application, we need to load the image. Once the image is loaded, we'll be doing some operation onto it, and finally once the operation is done, we will be showing it as an output. So for that we need to display the image, and finally to use it in the future purpose, we'll be saving that image. So on that note, so I'm going to use the command cv2.imread to load a particular image. So as you can see, we have already cloned the entire repository. Here you can see a folder named OpenCV. Inside that I'm just having some images inside it. Okay, so I'm going to use those images. So machine learning slash OpenCV slash images slash bb.jpg. So I've just given the path. So I'm just loading this entire content into this object, not as image. So this object has a lot of attributes which we will see later. But anyways, I'm just loaded the entire image into this object, and I'm going to show this image using the command cv2 underscore imshow of image. So in order to read an image, we'll be using the command cv2.imread. To show an image, we'll be using the command cv2 underscore imshow. And then so now let me just run this particular part. So since I have didn't run this particular block, so it's showing me an error. I'm just running it. So now you can see the images have been loaded using this command, and now I'm just going to save this image into a different name. So I'm not going to do any image processing right now. I'm just loading an image and then saving it right away, but using a different name. So this is the argument which is used to save an image, cv2.imwrite So I'm just saving the image in a different name. That's it. I'm not going to do anything. So I'm going to use big underscore boss underscore one.jpg comma the entire image. So I'm going to run it out. So once it is run, you can see the output is given as true. So it's it is mentioning light. The output have been saved. So here you can see the big boss underscore one have been saved. So this is how you can save, load, and display an image. So now let's go for the second function, as drawing function. This is one of the important technique which have to be noted, because whenever we like find an output, we need to augment those output for a better understanding. For example, when we uh, let us say detected a I just detected a human being. This is my face. So I just want to understand whether, because when I like try to show this particular output, the image with the particular human body will be like displayed, but my aim is to detect this face alone. So uh, I just want to understand whether the face have been recognized correctly or not, I mean detected correctly or not. So for that, I just, if I can able to draw a small bounding box on top of this face, I can able to say, okay, my face have been detected correctly by my OpenCV function or the particular image processing function. So in that note, this drawing function will be a very useful. So now let us try to understand the drawing functions. So here you can see I have just imported a package known as NumPy. So in this program, we are using NumPy to create some empty images, which we saw earlier in the examples. So I'm just importing this particular library, and then here you can see I'm just using the function np.once of 500 comma 500 comma 3 and data type as unsigned integer into 255. Let me break down into parts. So here you can see, I mean, this one is nothing but I'm going to create an array with is going to be filled with ones, and after that these two parameters represent the width and height of the particular image, and this is the channel of the particular image. So since I'm going to use a color image, I'm going to use 3 channel, which is nothing but RGB. And here you can see I'm using a data type known as unsigned integer of 8. So unsigned integer of 8 is nothing but 2 power 8. So 2 power is nothing but uh, I mean on a total of 256. So which can be break down into 0, 2, 2, 5 and 5. So typically each and every image will be starting from 0 and ending with 255. This is the maximum range which you can get for a pixel. So 0 will be black and 255 will be white. So this is how we can able to understand. I can say the number which is closer to 0 will be black and the number which is closer to 255 will be white. So this is how an image can be represented. So now I'm just loading an empty image, and also you can see I'm just multiplying it with 255. So making it to be 255 on every pixel. So this canvas will be in white in color. So now let me run this particular block. So now we have created a white color image which is in the dimension of 500 comma 500. So now I'm just going to draw a line onto this white color image. So in order to do that, I just want to create a color for it. So here you can see I've just created a tuple where I've given 3 elements inside it. So this 3 parameter represent the color of the particular component. So this is B and this is G and this is R. So obviously we termed image color into RGB, but in OpenCV it is different. I mean it will be B, G and R. So since I've given 0, 0, 0, this will be black in color. So I've given a name as black. So now I've just created a tuple that represent the black color. So I'm just going to use this color to draw a line. So in order to draw a line, we just need two important parameters. One is the starting point, another one the ending point. So if I can able to get the starting and the ending point, I can able to draw a line very easily. Right. So likewise, I just given the starting point as 0, 0 and the ending point as 400, 400. The color is given here as black, which you can see, which is mentioned here, and I've given a thickness as 3. So this is nothing but the pixel thickness which is going to be used. So 3 is the thickness of the line, black is the color of the line which is mentioned here. This is the starting point and ending point on which image I'm going to draw. So I'm going to use the canvas to draw this particular line, and I'm using the function cv2 underscore can underscore image of canvas to show the particular image. So let me run this particular block. Now you can see I just draw a particular line starting with 0 and ending with 400 comma 400, which is black in color, and the canvas is in white in color. So now we are going to see about how to draw a rectangle onto the same image. So in order to do that, we are going to use the function cv2.rectangle, and also in order to draw a rectangle, we just want 2 points for it, the starting point and an ending point. If I can able to get a starting point and an ending point, I can easily able to draw a particular rectangle onto it like this. So I just given a starting point and an ending point, as usual a color and the thickness of the particular line. So for this I have just created a list which contains 3 elements, 0, 0, 255, as I mentioned to you earlier, B, G and R. So since the R element is 255, this will be in red in color. So now let me run this particular block of code. You can see the rectangle have been drawn on the same image because I've just used the same canvas image for it. Same wise, I'm going to draw another rectangle, but this time I'm going to fill this rectangle into solid colors. So for that, I just created a new color 0, 255, 0, which is nothing but BGR. It will be in green in color. So all the parameters are the same. I've given a starting point and I've given an ending point. The color is little different, but here you can see I've just used the command -1. This -1 will help us to draw the rectangle and fill with solid colors. So now let me just run this code for a better understanding. Here you can see the rectangle is drawn, but the color is filled with this solid color. Rather going for a thickness point, I'm just filling it with this solid color. And now I'm just going to create a circle. So now since the image is somehow filled up with lot of blocks, I'm just going to create a new image. Here you can see I've just used the command np.zeros, final, 3, data type as unsigned integer. So I'm just creating an image which will be in black in color because everything is in the form of zeros. So I'm just creating this image, and now I'm just going to draw some circles onto it. So for this I'm going to create a for loop for I in range of 0, 25. So I just going to create some random circle for 25 iterations. So I'm just going to use the command np.random.random integer. So because every time when we use a randomness in NumPy, it will create a floating point. So in order to create an integer, I can use the command randint. So here you can see I've given a 5 as the starting point and 300 as the ending point. So this will be the threshold where my randomness will be generated. So it will never go less than 5 and above 300. So I'm just creating a point for the radius, because for radius I just want one particular number to draw the circle, because not to draw a circle we need 3 important things. So obviously one will be color, another one the center point and the radius. If I can able to get the radius and center point, I can able to draw the circle the correct way. So for that, the radius have been mentioned here right now. Here you can see. And then color, as usual, for this color we need 3 variables, so 3 contents inside it. So here you can see I've given a starting point, the end point is 256, which will not go till 256, it will end with 255. And here you can see the size is equal to 3 because we need 3 elements into it, and just wrapping into a list. So the color is randomly created right now, and I want the center point. For that I need 2 elements, so 0 to 400, size is 2. Here you can see I have mentioned it as list. Here I haven't mentioned anything here. Either you can create a list right away, or you can mention it here like this. So either you can go for a list or a tuple, that doesn't matter, but it's always better to go for a tuple because some things are fixed here. We don't want to waste the memory. So I'm just giving the command cv2.circle canvas, the image which I'm going to draw, tuple of point. So this will be randomly generated, some 2 points, that will be the center point for my circle, and then radius, that will be the randomly generated radius, the color, and the, so I'm going to fill this circle into solid colors. So I've used the content -1. So finally I'm going to show this image. So here you can see I've used all the commands inside this for loop. This image show will be outside the for loop, so entire circles will be drawn and then this image will be showed. So now let me run this piece of block. So now you can see this is the circles which have been drawn for 25 iterations. So there are like a lot of big circles which have been drawn, so we cannot see all the circles which have been drawn inside it. So this is one way of drawing circles and one way of creating your own art. That's what I can say. So the next thing is how to write some text onto an image. So that is also a very important thing, because when we classify some images, it's always cool to write some contents onto these images to classify that particular object. So on that point, writing text will also be much useful. So here you can see I'm just reading an image, cv2.imread, bigboss.jpg. So I've just read an image. So I'm going to use this image to write some content onto it. So further I'm going to use the command cv2.putText of the image which I'm going to write. This is the content which I'm going to write on the image, which is bigboss2, the starting point of the content. So in an image, which area I'm going to write. For example, this is my image. So if I give 30, 30 as a starting point, from here the text will be written. So there will be like no ending point, because based on the text size, my content ending point will be different. So the starting point alone will be mentioned, and this is the font style. So this is the default font style which I can use. This is the font size, 0.8 is the font size, and I'm just given the color directly here, BG and that. So this will be in green in color, and the thickness of the particular text. So finally, I'm just giving the command cv2._IamShow of image, which will show the image as an output. So now I'm just going to run this particular piece of block. Now you can see the image have been loaded, and I have written bigboss2 here correctly. So this is how you can use a drawing function effectively to showcase your output in an easier way. So now we are going to see the translation function. For this translation, we are going to use IAMutils rather than OpenCV, because it is much more simpler to implement it. So I'm just importing the package IAMutils. Here you can see I've just read an image, minion.jpg, and I'm just showcasing the original image here. So let me run it. Here you can see this is the original image. Now I'm going to translate. I'm going to move this image to some downward or upward, so that some portions can be occluded. So in that point, let me just show you the parameters here. So I'm going to use the function imutils.translate of the input image, and in which direction I'm going to translate. This is your x direction and this is your y direction. So positive number will translate your image in the y direction, and the negative number will translate your image in the upward direction. So if I give 100, so my image will be translated downwards for 100 pixel. If I give a negative value here, so obviously the image will be translated in the upward direction. So when I use this parameter, the image will be in the, if it in the positive direction, it will go in the left and right. So now let me run this block of code so that it will be easy to understand. As you can see, I've translated something to downward. So if I give a negative number, the entire image will be translated in the upward direction. As you can see, the head have been cut off. So what if I'm going to use a positive pixel in the x-axis? As you can see, it has moved to the right direction. If I use a negative, it will move to the left direction. So this can be of much handy to occlude some pattern which is in the down or in the top or in the left or right, so that we can use it as a separate image for our data set. So now let us go for rotation of images. This can also be used sometimes we need to rotate images to organize it. So it's very simple in IAMutils. You can use the function IAMutils.rotate of image, 180. So this is the rotation angle. So let me run it right away. It's easy to understand. I'm going to use the same image which have been loaded. So here you can see it have been rotated to angle 180 degree. So if I give a negative angle, it will be going in the counterclockwise direction. So this is also another important factor. But here you can see when I try to rotate to 80 degrees, so now here you can see some of the contents have been cropped, which will not be much useful for me. So there is another function where you can able to keep the entire images inside it and rotating it. So just Google about that function in IAMutils. That will be one of your exercise. So just try it to rotate images without losing the contents inside it using IAMutils itself. Okay, so this is rotation of image. So now let us go for the cropping function. So cropping is a little straightforward. We don't want any functions for it. So all we need to do is give the pixel coordinates. So here you can see this will be the start y, end y, and start x and end x. So if I can able to get the start x and end x and start y and end y, I can able to crop that particular region of image alone. So that is what we are mentioning here. So I'm just giving the pixel coordinates so that that content alone will be cropped down in this for this particular variable. So crop is equal to image of 10:30, comma 10:300. So now let me show that part. Now you can see this area alone have been cropped for this particular crop object. So this is how you can crop, because cropping is also very important, because in order to get some important features like this mobile phone alone, this can be much useful. And now resizing images. So resizing can be done in two aspects. One is without losing the aspect ratio and losing the aspect ratio. So now to understand much better, let me run it right away. For example, I'm just resizing this image into 500, 500. I'm not going to understand the dimension of the image at all. I just resize it right away with the fixed number of pixels. So let me run this particular piece of block. Now you can see this particular image have been somehow shrunken, so the features might be like little different than the original image, right? So because the minion width is little bit bigger, but here you can see the minion width is little bit smaller. So this might lose some important attribute of that unique object. So it is always wiser to resize image without losing the aspect ratio. So here you can see I've used a function known as imutils.resize of image, comma width is equal to 500. So by when I want to resize my image, I just given the fixed coordinate as width is equal to 500. So based on this width, the height will be calculated automatically so that the aspect ratio will never be lost. So now let me run this particular block of code. Now you can see the image have been resized, but the aspect ratio have been maintained. The image of minion is perfect. So the attributes of this very image will not be lost. So this is one of the, important aspect where you don't want to sacrifice the aspect ratio. But when it comes to deep learning and some other operations, sometimes we need to definitely resize image into the particular dimension. So on that time, you can use a CV2 function. Even you can use a CV2 function to resize image with the aspect ratio, but this is like much more simpler enough to do it out. So we are using IMUtils for it. So now we are going to see about flipping operation. So now let us go for flipping operation. So here you can see I'm just flipping images into vertical and horizontal direction. So now let me run the block straight away. Here you can see I'm using the function cv2.flip image comma 1. So this 1 represents the image will be moved into the x direction, and if I use it as 0, image will be moved in the y direction. So 0 represent y, 1 represent x. So if I use -1, it will be flipped into both the direction, x and y, so that it will be flipped in x and flipped with y. So this can also be used because for circular images, like for example coins, at that time you can use this kind of optionality to rotate or flip images in as per your need. So now let us go for bitwise operation. So in order to create a bitwise operation, I'm just creating two images. One is a rectangle image and a circle image. So I'm just creating an empty canvas, 300, 300 with data type of unsigned integer. Here you can see the image is black in color, and you can also see I haven't mentioned the dimension of this particular image. So this will be in one dimension. So 300, 300 with one dimension, and I'm going to draw a rectangle starting with 25 and ending with 275, 275, and you can see the color is 255 directly. Since it's one channel, I just given the solid color as 255, which will be in white in color, and I'm going to fill this rectangle into solid color of white. So now let me run this particular block. Now you can see this is my particular image onto which I just drawn a white color rectangle. Now I'm just going to draw a circle in the same way. So when you put out zeros, 300, 300, data type is unsigned of 8. So for circle, we need starting center point, radius, and the color for it. So I'm just going to run it out. So this is the image which I got for the circle operation. So now I'm going to use a bitwise operation for these two images. So here you can see bitwise and is equal to cv2.bitwise of underscore and rectangle comma circle. So I'm going to do an AND operation for these two images. So since it is numbers of 0 to 255, multiplication will be done for these two pixel, for these two entire images with the pixels, So now you can see when I do a multiplication function, the black regions of the circle have been deleted. So this is the region which I got for an AND operation. Same ways I can go for OR, something like this, XOR, which will be exclusive of numbers, so something like this, and then NOT operation. For NOT I've just given one parameter as circle, so this will be exclusive of the circle. So the white components will be turned as black and the black components will be turned as white. So where can I use this kind of logical operations? So mainly if I want to mask a region, mask some particular region of an image, at that time this kind of masking, this kind of bitwise operation can be much useful. So for example, I do have an image that has a face and that has a body and some elements inside it. So what if I want to just mask this region of interest to process in much detail? So on that point I can create a same image with the same dimension, but I just create a mask that can cover the face alone. So when I multiply these two images, I get as an output of just the face alone, something like this. So this kind of operations, this bitwise operation is much useful. So let us understand in much detail how this bitwise operation will be like much useful in the next section, which is nothing but masking. Now you can see I just created an empty canvas, but here you can see I've used the properties of the image. I mean image dot shape of column of 2. This column of 2 is nothing but the width and height of my image, because the first two attributes of my image will be width and height. The final attribute will be the channel of the image. I don't want the channel because I'm going to create a mask that will be in the dimension of 1. So and I give an answer of 8. So here you can see I've just created a rectangle for it and I filled with white color. Let me run this block. But as you can see, this particular function is maintaining the aspect ratio of my input image so that the masking can be multiplied directly onto my image. So now I'm just going to use the function bitwise, and input is my image, output will be image, mask will be mask. Because here you can see I'm just multiplying a color image with a single dimension image, so that an extra parameter have been included here. So now when I run it, you can see this particular minion alone have been masked. So this input image have been masked with this masking image, so that I got this as an output. So I can further process onto this particular minion to do some operations. So this is how masking will work and will be like much more useful. And also we can use a circular mask to do the same. So I'm just creating another input image. Here you can see just created a circle, and I'm just going to use the bitwise and for the same, and I can just show you the output. Here you can see cv2 underscore mask and the mask. So I just mentioning the mask image and the masked image. So this is my mask image. So this is little big, so it's not being shown. So this is my mask image, and you can see I just draw a small circle just in white in color. When I just multiply it, I just get the high of this particular minion alone. So this is how the masking operation can be handled. Operation which we are going to see about is smoothing and blurring. So to understand it much better, let us take an example. So let me have an image which has a lot of pixel inside it. So for example 1 2, suddenly I have a 13 pixel, 1 again 1 2 3, again a certain 40 and 50, something like this. So now you can see these are some of the pixel which is representing. I mean my writing is little bad, please to bear with it, but to understand it much clearly, we can say that there are like pixel which is very low, close to 0, 1 2 3 4, something like that, but suddenly I'm getting some spikes like 30 40 and 30 like this. So I can say if you want an image that has some spikes like this, definitely this will be a noise, because whatever structure, or for example for a face something like this, we get number which slowly increase from 0 to 10 to 20 and to some point, to make this transition from this white area to this edge. So we call this particular regions to be edges. So in order to make this edge to be much more smoother, the value will slowly increase and slowly decrease to the next level. But here in this case, the numbers are spiking real fast. Because of this kind of spike numbers, our machine learning model will find it little difficult to understand the features inside it. So typically people use smoothing and blurring to reduce this number, so that all the number are somehow gradual to each other. So I can say that smoothing and blurring can be of much use when it comes to reducing the noises rather than blurring and reducing the quality of the image. Because when you take a selfie in a low lighted area, you might see in the dark areas there are like lot of pixels will be like accumulated. You would have wondered what kind of pixels that. That's because of the camera which is trying to understand whether the reflected back light is a black or some other color. Because of that we get these kind of noises. Likewise we do have different types of noises. So in order to reduce those noises, we do have different blurring techniques that can able to average and reduce the numbers smoothly, so that the noise can be reduced at some point. So for that we do have different operations here. One is average blur, Gaussian blur, and median blur. So all we need to do is just call the function cv2.blur and the image and which type of kernel which you're going to use. So there are like different types of kernels that is used for each and every blurring operations. Average blur is something like we'll be having for example in this case we have 3,3 as a kernel. So we'll be having a kernel of 3,3 which will be multiplied with the image. For example, let me show you. So we have a kernel like this, 1 1 1 1 1 1 and 1 1 1. So this is the kernel which I'm going to use. So this is my image, just little big, 20 30 40, so something like that, this. So when I try to multiply this kernel with this image, so only this area will be multiplied along to each other. So when I multiply this, I get some numbers. I add up all those numbers and take an average out of it. So the average number will be replaced with this number. So typically the center point will be replaced. Now you can see that using these kernels and the factors which you have used in this image can smoothen up the image by averaging it out. Likewise, each and every kernels have their own techniques. Like for example, Gaussian will be like somehow the map will be like something like this. And the peak point will be like considered. Median is somehow close to average blur, but average will be like something like we'll be taking an average, where in this case we'll get the middle number out of it. So each and every blurring has its own merits and demerits. It's up to us to decide which blurring techniques to go on. So now let me run this particular block of code. Here you can see the image is somehow blurred. So if I can able to increase this kernel size, the blurring will be like much more higher. So one thing to note down here is like if the blurring operation is very high, the features in the image will also be lost. So we need to make sure only the noise have been removed, not the features. So that's one thing to be noted. And same wise go for Gaussian blurring. Here you can see the difference. Gaussian blurring like mostly focus on the centric points rather when smoothing out the entire area, and median blur is somehow closer to average blurring. Now you can see that it is somehow something like this. So likewise, using this blurring operation, we can able to reduce the noise contents in the image, so that it will be easy to go for this next operation. Because for a machine learning classifier, each and every number is very important. If you have a different numbers that is actually not contributing to my learning rate, this will not be of much use. So, and also when it comes to OCR techniques, this blurring operation will be of much use. Thresholding is something like a condition which help us to understand whether the given pixel can be altered based on the numbers. For example, let me load an image and I'm going to convert that image into grayscale and I'm going to show that image. For example, I've taken an image of OpenCV logo. Here you can see I've taken the path of it. Since it is inside my GitHub repository, which I've loaded in the collaborating notebook. And also you can see another condition where I've converted this color image into grayscale, because in order to make thresholding to work, it is always better to go for a grayscale image because it works in a single dimension much better. So I'm just converting the color image into grayscale. Here you can see cv2.cvt color of the input image comma cv2.color underscore bgr to gray. So in this way we can able to convert a color image into grayscale. One can have in mind that can we convert a grayscale image into a color image, but that is really not the way we look for, because we don't know the other dimensional color spaces, so that is not possible. Unless and until we change that color image into grayscale, we might have some understanding out of it. But in this case, I'm just converting a color image into grayscale and I'm showing it out. After that, I'm just going to make a threshold function here. Here you can see cv2.threshold of the image, input image, and a condition is just given here as 100. So whenever my pixel value goes above 100, I will turn that pixel into black, that is 0. Else I will turn the pixel into 255. So the maximum value will be given here. So based on this 100 as a threshold, we will try to manipulate the pixel data either 0 or 255. So here in this case, I have given it as cv2.threshold binary underscore inverse. So if I want to like make it as in the inverse way, whenever the pixel value goes above 100, I will make it as white, else it will be black. So these are the two functions which is used here. Here you can see we will be having two parameters here, but this thresh inverse will have the actual image content. I mean something similar to a mask. So I'm just running it out here. It's taking some time. Here you can see whichever region that is above 100 have been made as black, and the rest is made as white. So same wise for threshold, which is not inverse, it will be in the opposite way. Here you can see it is totally opposite. So since my OpenCV logo is not complete because the green color is not visible at all, so let me change the value to maybe 200. That way maybe I can get all the content which is necessary for me. So this is how masking works. So based on this numbers, we can able to create a mask, and that particular mask can be used for some other input function. So as in the case, let me use this mask to multiply with my original image to get the components of it. So cv2.bitwise of an image, and the mask is my threshold inverse. So if I run it, only the white portion will get multiplied with the actual image, and I get an image like this, which has the contents of the mask alone. So here you can see there are like a lot of small pixel variation because of the edges. It is not that smooth. In this time we can able to use our blurring and smoothing operation to make it much more smoother enough. This is one way of doing it, but the problem in this point is like when the intensity or the level of image varies, the threshold value have to be altered again and again. So that will make us a very big challenge when it comes to a lot of big data sets, and that time this Otsu thresholding can be used. So you can Google about Otsu thresholding. It's an adaptive concept where we can able to find the actual threshold value which is having a very big difference between the entire distribution of the pixels in the image. So here you can see I've used the same condition here, cv to the threshold, the image, input image, 0 is my in the previous case we'll be like using this as a condition, but in this case I'm just giving an empty value. You can give any value which you want as 255. Everything is the same, but I have added a function here known as cv2.thresh underscore Otsu. This function will decide this value. So whatever value which is given here will not work. This Otsu threshold will automatically create a value and deploy it. So now I run it. Now you can see it is like much more better than the previous one, and even the edges are more smoother. So in this way, it will intelligently calculate the average value of the pixels and keep it as a threshold value. So this is how an auto thresholding works. So in this way, I mean, let me run the mask for the same. Now it is like much more better than the previous one. This is how a thresholding works. This will be like much more helpful when it comes to segmenting a particular color or something like that. Even color segmentation is also possible. This is just for a grayscale image. We can also do the same for a color image, where we need to like split the channels into three and then make this thresholding, I mean, on each and every channel of the image. And the next and important concept is contour. This will be like much more useful because contouring techniques can be used as a basic image processing element where you can do a lot of wonders, because sometimes it is wiser to use a image processing technique rather to go for a machine learning concept behind it. So in that case, let me like unroll the concept right away. So let me just load an image cv2.imread. Some images have been loaded, and I've converted this image into grayscale, and I'm showing it right now. So you can see this is the image which I'm going to use for my contour operation. So contour is something similar to the magic wand or the quick selection tool which is used in Photoshop. So typically it will find the edges and find the connected component of those edges. For example, here in this case, if my, I will be like detecting edges like this, right? So all the entire edges will be like detected, and you can see the edges almost connected all along to each other. So I will detect the edges and I will make a connected component analysis to understand whether this entire edge represent one object or not. So likewise, I will look for this region, when I look for this one, and even the internal boundary can also be taken care of. Sorry, let me change the color. Internal boundary can also be taken care of. So likewise, it will look for connected edges and make it as a block. So that is known as typical contour, which we use in our quick selection or a magic wand tool in Photoshop. So let me apply the same technique in OpenCV now. So I'm going to use a function cv2.find contours. I'm just making a copy of my image, and then I've just given a command known as cv2.retrieve list and chain approximable. There are like a lot of approximation technique because we need to find the connected components. So for that, best approximation technique is your chain approximable that can be used. This retrieve list is nothing but it will retrieve all the components which have been detected by the contours. So in that way, I'll be getting all the contour components in this CNTS, and then I'm just going to draw those contours onto my image again. So here you can see clone. On top of that, I'm going to draw the contours. -1 represent, draw all the contours, because this is the positional argument. If I give 0, only one contour will be drawn, something like that. So if I give -1, the entire contours which have been detected will be drawn on the particular image. So this is the color and the thickness of the image. So this particular line will help us to check the difference between the OpenCV version, because on the higher version, the parameters have been a little bit moved on. So that won't be a problem for now. So let me run this block. So just printing in the array, it's not needed. Now just let me show the image. Here you can see all the blocks have been drawn, but also you can see the internal contour has also been drawn. Sometimes we need to retrieve the external contours alone. At that point, we can use the command cv2.retrieve external. Using this ideology, we can able to convert, we can able to get the contours of the outer boundary alone. So here you can see I've made a small loop where it takes each and every contour and draw a mask and multiply with the original image. So that's what is happening here. So let me run it. Okay. Okay, we haven't defined, I guess we have used numpy at some point and we have not declared it here. Let me import it. Okay, so let me run it one more time and then let me run it. Now you can see this is the first block. Okay, everything is like coupled around here. So this is one image. I've just taken one block. This is the second image and this is the third image, because since I've used for loop, everything is printing in the same region, so that we can't find the difference between each and every image. So I've just separated the blocks separately. If I want, like, if my focus of interest on this block, I can use this image, or else this or this image. Likewise, we can able to even create a mask and multiply with our original image to get the important components which is needed for us. In this way, contour can be much useful. Let me give you a use case that will help us to understand in much detail about where the contours can be utilized in much. I'm just making a small license plate detection which is done by image processing, which is not 100% right, but to understand it much better about contours, this will be like much more useful. So now let us go for license plate detection, where you can able to understand where the contours can be utilized much. And also this is like a simple license plate detection which will not be that accurate in a lot of conditions. So on that note, I'm just loading an image and I'm resizing my image without losing the aspect ratio, since I have used imitals.resize, and then I have converted my image into grayscale, because it is mandated to convert an image into grayscale for contours. So just run this block. Let me show the image. So this is my image. where I'm going to detect this particular license plate alone. Here you can see a unique characteristic of this license plate is like it is white in color. The rest of the region is somehow different in color. So I can able to detect this white color like making a mask, and then use the mask to apply contours and find the region of my interest. So that's what I've done here. So here you can see I've applied a threshold here. I've used Otsu thresholding. So based on the Otsu thresholding, I can able to get the correct threshold value which is needed. So here you can see, I mean, since I've used inverse, it's quite opposite. So all the white pixels have been changed into black. So this entire black region is somehow unique for us right now. I can utilize a contour function to detect all the blobs which is here. So definitely we'll be getting a lot of connected edges, but this is like a very big chunk of edge, and it is like having a ratio of something rectangulish. So we can utilize that to our advantage, and let us apply contour for it. So here you can see I've applying a contour for the same, and I'm cloning the image, and then I use a function cv2.boundingRect. This will help us to convert this contour into actual coordinates, which is nothing but x, y, and wh. X, y, wh in the sense, if I can able to get these coordinates, I can draw a rectangle, because x, y will be here. If I can able to get the width and the height, definitely I can able to draw. I can able to find this region also, and I can draw the bounding box for the same. So using this bounding rect function, I can translate this contour value into a readable value, so that I can use it for a future purpose. So now what I do is I look for the width and the height as a condition here. So if my width and height is somehow inside this, I will pass that contour alone, and I will draw the rectangle for the same. So now let me run it. It will give you a better understanding. Now you can see, since the width is matching only this region, I've just found that region, and I draw a rectangle for the same. Here you can see I've used the same values to draw the rectangle. So in the previous condition, we have just utilized contour to draw, but we don't know where are the coordinates. But in this case, I'm just using start x, start y, end x, and end y. Obviously, x plus width will give you the end x, and y plus h will give you the end y. Using that ideology, I've just created a rectangle, and I'm showing the image right now. So this is the printed value which I've got. So x, y, and wh. So using this print, I can able to understand what is the actual width and height of my license plate. This can be a pet project that can be used in your local apartments, but the problem is like the camera position should be like pakka, and the car which is coming entering into your apartment should be should be maintaining a distance. So in that way, it might work for 50%, but it's not that accurate, because I always believe that machine learning will definitely increase the percentage for the same. So this is how you can utilize a particular OpenCV library to do a lot of image processing operations.